Here in the United States, we are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country. America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
All right, we will never be a socialist country, but look at all these 2020 candidates. The president last night, the state of this union is strong and stating in no uncertain terms America will never, ever be a socialist country, unless, of course, we foolishly want false promises of security and give up all our freedom. For example, look at Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, not exactly happy. Freshman lawmaker took to the airwaves after the speech saying the president feels threatened by her insane policies. All right, joining us now is, I guess you don't do a whole lot of interviews for reaction, is Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. How do you like this job versus where you were? And
I love this job. It's good to see you. It's my first time here. I'm never up at this time of night.
Thanks a lot. You don't watch my show. I appreciate it.
I'm always in bed. I work very hard to get there first thing in the morning for the boss. So I thought the speech was a blast. I thought that was what you just showed was my favorite line of the whole night. And to see the president actually say those words, we're not going to be a socialist country, and then from where I was sitting, I could see all of the Democrats on the floor, and not a single one of them stood to applaud that line. That was just stunning.
A Green New Deal, they want to eliminate fossil fuels in 10 years, just at the point we surpassed Russia and Saudi Arabia.
And just as we're proving that all of those things don't work, we don't need those things. Those things aren't the formula for success. They're not the way for families to build sustained wealth. The way to do that is to lower regulation, lower taxes, increase energy production. We're seeing wages go up. All the things the Democrats say they can do if the government does more, we are doing by having the government do less. And that was one of the highlights of the debate last night.
I remember back when you were just a little congressman.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. And I remember when I watched you and watched you in this administration, and you and I've got to admit, Mike Pompeo, my two favorites, and Secretary Nielsen's doing a great job. And I watch. And I told people when the president shifted strategies on immigration, I told this audience, because I've known this man for well over a couple of decades, that he keeps his promises. He's unrelenting, tenacious. He's going to get money for the wall. Yeah. The deadline is now approaching. I think he's got two options: just use the military, as he's now doing, as Obama did and Bush did, or the national emergency.
Yeah, he said it very clearly last night. He's going to get it done. In fact, I think he put his hand up to take that oath, that he was going to get it done. And he is. We would love to work with Congress to do that. That's the right way to do it. It's the easiest way to do it. It's the fastest way to do it. But if Congress won't participate and won't go along, we'll figure out a way to do it with executive authority. And let's be clear about this, legal executive authority. This is not a circumstance of the president overstepping his bounds.
We know the next step. They're going to go judge shopping, California, Oregon, Hawaii, wherever, knowing that they're likely to get a liberal justice. That'll then go to the Ninth Circuit. Is there a way? I know Pat Cipolloni's the White House counsel. Is there a way to expedite this and get it right to the Supreme Court because it is an emergency?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that we can do it, and we're looking at all of them. You've just laid out exactly one of the challenges that we face. So how are we going to approach it if it comes to this? Find the money that we can spend with the lowest threat of litigation, and then move from that pot of money to the next pot that maybe brings a little bit more threat of litigation, and then go through the budget like that. Remember that the president asked us 8 months ago to start looking for every pot of money that we could find. I was involved with it in my previous job over as the director of OMB.
I heard you found somewhere around $9 trillion.
Trillion? No, not 9 trillion. No,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean $9 billion. I got to get my B's, T's, and M's straight now. $9 billion. I heard you found $9 billion.
If you know where I can find 9 trillion, please let me know.
I'll let you know. So, is that true?
We have access, legal access to substantially more than $5.7 billion.
That's a serious amount of money, and that would get the job done, because the 5.7 is only for the wall, but we need new technologies, and we need more agents, and we need other
And the president has been very straightforward about that. If in fact you go back to the beginning of the shutdown when we told the Democrats in writing what we wanted, we listed all of those things. We also said, by the way, it's not a, to use their words, medieval wall. It's not 2,000 miles coast to coast. Yet you still hear the Democrats going on TV and say medieval walls don't work. They've lost the debate here.
So my question is, the president tweeted out, and I agree with him, the Democratic Party has moved solidly to the left. Look at those that want to vie for the 2020 Democratic nomination. Kamala Harris wants to get rid of all private health care. And that means we're forced into one government-run system. Elizabeth Warren, a wealth tax. We hear people talking about a 70 or higher % tax rate.
Yeah.
Radical redistribution of wealth, and which I think will help the president in 2020. And then on this issue, the very things Democrats supported for the last, just a few years ago, they won't even sit with the president. How can you get anything done? Yeah. With that opposition?
Go back to their policies. If there is one silver lining to the terrible tragedy in Venezuela right now, and it is a humanitarian tragedy of epic proportion, but the one silver lining there is it's re-educating an entire generation of Americans what's wrong with socialism. Because what you've just laid out, that all the Democrats are offering us, has been put into place in Venezuela, and look what's happening. People have lost 20% of their body weight in the last couple of years. It doesn't work. It never has worked. One of the things that always stuns me about socialists is that despite the fact that history is just littered with examples of how it doesn't work and hurts people, they come out and say, well, they just didn't do it right. If you give us the power to do it, if you elect us, we'll be socialists and we'll do it right this time.
Until, of course, you run out of other people's money. The president also talked a lot about foreign policy, more specifically the summit, Vietnam, with Kim Jong-un. No hostages returned. We had American soldiers return from the 50s. No more missiles in 15 months. President gave nothing. Now we're talking about denuclearization. Something that maybe could get done in Vietnam, or maybe we're going to need more time.
There was a really good article in one of the Beltway papers the other day about how maybe it's time, even the critics think it's maybe time to start giving the president some credit for the foreign policy successes. Bottom line, your family, my family, everybody watching this is safer now than they were 2 years ago when the president got elected. And I think that's something that a lot of people are starting to pay attention to.
All right, Mick Mulvaney, Chief of Staff of the President. You want a permanent job there? I like it.
I'm having a great time.
All right, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
This is the moment that is getting things moving today. Take a look.
We must choose between greatness or gridlock, results or resistance, vision or vengeance, incredible progress or pointless destruction. Tonight, I ask you to choose greatness.
Well, he's had greatness a number of times. He did not utter the word shutdown. He did not utter the word emergency. He did not say my way or the highway throughout any of his remarks. And Mark Weinberg noticed. Mark, of course, Ronald Reagan's former assistant press secretary, best-selling author. And you were helping me on our coverage on Fox Business, Mark. And one of the first things that came to mind is this reaching across the aisle, this idea that much like the Gipper, Ronald Reagan, each side has a chance to help the other side. He exercised that last night. What did you think?
It was a good move. It's the right thing to do. He's got to go beyond his core base and bring in people. After all, the House now is controlled by Democrats. And Donald Trump is president of all the people. He's not just president of his base. Reagan knew that. He reached across the aisle. Remember, there were things called Reagan Democrats or Blue Dogs.
And Blue Evils and all that, right?
Right. And remember the relationship that Reagan developed with Tip O'Neill, the speaker. That was perhaps the most important relationship that he had congressionally as president.
Now, you know, it's interesting, too, because Reagan was famous for whatever we get out of a deal, do not make the other side look bad. Each side has got to walk away from this feeling that they got something. So if we get something we really like, don't rub it in their faces. John Kennedy pretty much the same way when negotiating tax cuts that sadly came to fruition after his death. I'm wondering whether the president was taking a page from history there.
I hope so. I mean, it was on the eve of, today would be Reagan's 108th birthday, by the way.
Right? Wow.
Yeah, he'd be 108 today, the Gipper. So maybe President Trump was thinking about him a little bit last night. I sure hope so. But you're right. You can't spike the ball. You have to, everybody has to go home and be able to declare victory, and that's the only way they come back the next day.
Now, of course, he and Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan, developed a personal relationship that often meant negotiating late in the night at the White House residence. I believe some alcohol would be involved there. Well, but whatever works, right?
Right.
I'm just wondering whether this president and, for example, Nancy Pelosi could enjoy the same type of relationship, and it doesn't seem likely.
It doesn't seem likely, but that's okay. Right. They're different people, and it's a different time. That doesn't mean they can't work together. I mean, after all, they're both politicians. They are both there to do the business of the people and make the country better. And if they work to find what they have in common, not what divides them, they'll get it done.
Do you think it's enticing? I don't know whether Ronald Reagan did this, but maybe you can help me with this, Mark. The idea that, look, we make progress on this. Look at the other areas where we have pretty broad and bipartisan agreement, lowering drug prices, infrastructure. What do you think? Was a teaser?
Maybe so. You know, progress begets progress. And if they get one success under their belt and it feels good, they're more inclined to work toward another area of working together, like on a sentencing reform. That was good for everybody. And they should use what they got, how they got there, to move forward on other issues.
You know, you were the first to seize on something that happened last night that a lot of people have been talking about ever since. When the president gave his speech, obviously, to the vice president and gives it to Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, shortly thereafter, he immediately began speaking.
Right.
And there was not the normal introduction where the speaker says, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the President of the United States. There's a line of applause and all. That never happened. Why not? What do you think?
I don't know if he jumped the gun or if he just didn't want her to introduce him, because usually the speaker says, I have the distinct personal privilege and the high honor of presenting to you. But maybe he was just anxious to get started.
You know, Mark, you were telling me, too, there's something special about this venue. The president, when the speech was first delayed by Nancy Pelosi, he could have done it on the Senate side. It would have been problematic. Or he could have given it in the Oval Office or anywhere else. But you had said, no, there's something about that locale that matters. It's historic. It's significant. It's a stage like no other.
It's iconic. The President of the United States, with the Speaker and Vice President behind him, and that giant flag, and that chamber. There's no other forum quite like that. And it says something about our country, and that at the end of the day, we're all Americans.
You know, I was forgetting that in 1983, when Ronald Reagan gave his State of the Union address, his popularity had plummeted. There were a lot of people saying there's no way in heck this guy's going to be reelected. The same kind of sentiment builds, at least among Democrats, who say Donald Trump has no chance at all. History is a funny thing. And of course, in the 1983 State of the Union address, Reagan knocked it out of the park, and you know, everything was going up from there. The economy picked up considerable steam. The rest is history, as you remind me. What can this president and maybe people following him learn from that?
That you never count a president of the United States out or down. Political fortunes can turn on a dime. And if presidents keep their word and do what they say they're going to do, they're a lot more likely to generate popular support than if it's just empty rhetoric.
Well said. Mark Weinberg, the former Reagan Assistant Press Secretary, best-selling author.